Let's go to some difficult topics. You wrote in the book about your experience with some very low points in government. You've been attacked quite a bit. One of the ones that stands out is the accusations of collusion with Russia. And you tell in the book, in general, this whole story, this whole journey, on a personal level, on a sort of big political level. Can you tell me some aspects of this story?
Sure. So to give the listeners some context, and people remember this now, it's been kind of swept away because it turned out not to be true, was that after President Trump won the election in 2016, instead of the media saying, oh, we were wrong, because again, everyone thought he had zero chance of winning, they said, okay, well, we couldn't have been wrong. It must have been the Russians who worked with him. And so at first, when this started coming up, I thought this was ridiculous. I mean, I was very intimately involved with the operations of the campaign. I was running the finance of the campaign. I was running the digital media of the campaign. I was running the schedule for the campaign. And I knew that on most days we had trouble, coordinating with ourselves, let alone, collaborating with another government and or colluding, as they called it. And so, we did a great job, I think, as an underdog campaign, very leanly staffed. And then they said that, we were working with the Russians. And so at the time, I didn't take it too seriously because I knew there was no truth to it. But it was amazing to me to start seeing all of these institutions, whether it was CNN, the Washington Post, New York Times, these were news organizations that I grew up having a lot of respect for, taking these accusations so seriously and then working themselves up in order to just cover it for 2 years. And then as a result, you had a special counsel, you had a House investigation, a Senate investigation. And I personally spent about, I think, over 20 hours just testifying before these different committees. Again, spent millions of dollars out of my own pocket on my legal fees to make sure I was well represented. And the reason I did that was because I saw in Washington, it was like a sick game, right? It's almost like, even though there was no underlying problems to the accusation, I felt like this is one of those things where they're going to try to catch you. And then if you step on the line, they catch you with one misrepresentation, they're going to try to put you in jail or worse. And so for me, that was a big concern. So, it was amazing. I mean, my poor mom, I told her to stop, reading whatever. I said, I promise you, we didn't do anything wrong. It's good. But, she'd call me and say, well, our friends were, on the Upper East Side, we're talking with Chuck Schumer, says Jared's going to jail. We know for sure that he colluded with the Russians. And this is like a leading senator saying things like this. And so it was just interesting for me to see how the whole world could believe something and be talking about it that I knew with 1,000% certainty was just not true. And so seeing that play out was very, very hard. Obviously, I was accused of a lot of things. There were times in Washington I was radioactive. I remember one weekend, it was all over CNN. They had panels on CNN, like the news organization that I grew up thinking was like the number one trusted name for news in the world, talking about how I'd committed treason because I met with an ambassador and said, we'd like to hear your perspective on what you think the policy should be in Syria, where there was a big civil war happening and ISIS and a lot of different things. So it was quite a crazy time in that regard. But luckily, again, we were able to fight through it. It was a major distraction for our administration. I think we were able to kind of stay focused on the objectives and the policies. But it was a crazy time. And I learned a lot from that experience.
It's crazy how just an accusation can be viral and can just go. One of the things that worries me is the effect on your mind, the psychology of it, to make sure it doesn't make you cynical. Like people that are trying to do stuff, those kinds of stories that can destroy their mind. So one of the things I'd love to sort of understand, you who kind of rolled in from the business world, and all of a sudden the entire world, from CNN to everybody, is accusing you of colluding with the Russians. Like, what do you, like when you're sitting at home, how do you keep a calm mind, a clear mind, an optimistic one that doesn't become cynical and actually just keep trying to push on and do stuff in the world?
Yeah, so it was a surreal experience. I would say number one is I felt very confident that I hadn't done anything wrong. So, I'd always tell my lawyer, like, the good news is I've got a good fact problem, right? Like I need a good lawyer to get me through it, but it's much easier to be a good lawyer if you have a very innocent client. And so, the fact that I knew that I didn't believe that I had any legal liability helped me kind of intellectually separate the challenge I needed to do to fight through it from it. And then I just basically said, like, I'd had hardship earlier in my life where I dealt with the situation with my father. And what I realized there is that you can't really spend energy on the things that you don't control. All you can do is spend your time and energy worrying about what you can control, and then how do you react to the things that you have there. And so it took a lot of discipline. It took a lot of strength. And again, I give my wife Ivanka and even Donald a lot of credit for for kind of having my back during that time, and encouraging me just to kind of fight through it. And then I also had to make sure that I didn't allow that to distract me from my job. I felt like I had an amazing opportunity in the White House to make a difference in the world. And if I would have spent all my time playing defense, in politics, it's a time duration game. In business, you have whatever duration you set for yourself. In politics, it's time duration. We had 4 years. Every day was sand through an hourglass. My mindset was, I need to accomplish as much as I can in these 4 years. And I guess the traditional game that's played in Washington is, whether it's the media, the opposition, their job is to distract you and then try to stop you from being as successful as you want to be. And so just fought through it. And it wasn't always fun, but we got through, and thank God it's something people don't talk about. And it has been amazing to me, just the lack of self-awareness and reflection of a lot of the people who hyped this up for 2 years. They don't think there was anything wrong with it. And that's interesting. But, my view is we got through it. It's good. So it's in the past. And then I started moving to the future, and that's really where I spent my time.
But I want to linger on it because to me, that has a really discouraging effect on anyone who's trying to do positive in the world. Like, these kinds of attacks are intense.
Yeah.
I mean, you say kind of one of the lessons you learned is that you really have to be perfect, but I hate that to be the lesson. Like, I feel like you should be able to do stupid stuff, take big risks, and like people celebrate the big risks and not try to weave gigantic stories over nothing. So I just want to kind of understand the two aspects of this, how to not have such stories have so much legs, and the other is how to stay psychologically strong. So you kind of waved it off that you didn't have a fact problem, but it can just have a effect on your psyche.
Yeah.
You seem to be pretty stoic about the whole thing, but like just on the psychology side, how did you stay calm and not become cynical, where you can continue to do stuff and take big risks?
I didn't have a choice.
What do you mean?
I mean, I could have spent every day feeling sorry for myself or complaining or saying things aren't fair. But the general way I looked at it was that in life, every opportunity has a cost. And, you could look at it and say, maybe this was a massive cost, either in dollars or in time or in reputation or in emotional drain. But you could also say that, I had an opportunity to work in the White House, and I had an opportunity to work on some of the hardest challenges. You talk about how that's not celebrated. That is something very different. In the private sector, when you take on big challenges, that is celebrated. In government, when you take on big challenges, people want to see it fail, or they want to criticize those people who are trying to take that on. And I think that's wrong. And I think that, as a country, we should be thinking big, we should be dreaming big, and we should be encouraging our politicians to try and to fail more, and to go and to take on big things, knowing that there's risk of failing. Obviously, we want them to succeed, not to fail, but let's take on the big things. Let's try to do that. So I think it's just very basic that, you're in a situation. I've made decisions. I can't go back and change decisions in the past. I still felt, very blessed to be in the position I was in. And I knew that I just had to work through it. And like I said, I was very lucky to have, support from my wife and from my family and from good friends. Again, I think I'd chosen very good friends in life, and my friends were with me. I had one friend who my lowest moment, got on the plane. He lived in Arizona, got on a plane and came just to have dinner with me to say, just pick your head up. I know you're down now. You're going to be fine. Just fight through. That meant a lot to me. And again, I always think in my life, you don't learn as much from your successes. You don't learn as much from your high points. You learn the most about who you want to be and how the world works from your lowest moments. And at those lowest moments, it made me better. And it taught me how to be a better friend to people who are in tough situations. And I tried to just get tougher, and I tried to just get better and work through it.